Is this? Oh, we do have a quorum, I guess.
Yeah, we do. I'm just surprised we're
Well, we
running
got
in late
Kevin here.
today.
Oh, here's Kevin.
I'm gonna wait till about 6:58 to do the liquor commission, because that's just gonna go without a hitch.
Right.
Hey, Kevin.
Hello. Good morning. No, I just made my glasses so I can see through them. They're really smudged. All right. Get you looking all holiday festive. Trash happened tonight, basically.
Call to order a special meeting for the normal local liquor commission. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos,
Here?
Miss Lorenz, Ms. Harris,
Here?
Mr. Byers,
Here.
Miss Smith,
Here.
Mr. Preston, Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
First item of business is approval of the minutes of the special meeting of November 4th, 2024.
Move approval.
Second?
Any corrections or additions? Please call the roll.
Miss Lorenz, Ms. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. The minutes are approved. We have a video gaming application for Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores Incorporated at 2007 North Main Street. Application for a video gaming license.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second?
Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Miss Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. That license is approved, and motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Miss Lorenz, Miss Harris,
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye, we are adjourned. Call to order a regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for December 2nd, 2024. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos,
Here?
Miss Lorenz, Miss Harris,
Here?
Mr. Byers, Miss Smith,
Here.
Mr. Preston,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a number of public commenters tonight, and just to go over the rules, I'm asking when you come forward to speak that you state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Our first commenter is Nolan Owens.
Good evening, Council. So I would like to start by thanking the city staff members that came out and took the time to discuss the nuisance gathering ordinance with the community members. After looking through the revised ordinance, I can definitely see that our comments were taken into consideration. Some changes that I liked were the increased minimum from 3 people to 10, the distinction between nuisance gatherings and nuisance participants, and the exemptions outlined in Section H. I also like the removal of amplified music from the list of qualifying offenses. The major issue that I saw with the original ordinance was that it was an issue of police discretion, right, in its application. These changes definitely make me feel safer, as I feel it aligns better with the stated purpose of the ordinance. So while all of that may be true, I don't think that this current ordinance is perfect. I do still think that there are issues with enforcing an ordinance like this. However, it's my understanding that an ordinance like this, it's very similar to many others of its kind. And issues of enforcement are often, they often can't be recognized before the fact. That is something I understand and sympathize with. So while I support this revision more than the original, I would just like to make the council aware that the application of this ordinance must be taken very seriously. As I'm sure you would all agree, your goal here today is not to infringe on any First Amendment rights or to stamp out the culture here in Normal. So I would just like for you guys to make it clear to us that this is not your intentions moving forward. Thank you.
Next speaker is Carla Bailey Smith.
Good evening. My name is Carla Bailey Smith, and I am here on behalf of the Steering Committee for the Central Illinois chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU would like to thank the Council for allowing us to appear before you this evening and express our continued objection to the ordinance regarding nuisance gatherings considered this evening. Before talking about our particular objections to the updated version of the ordinance, I want to express a deep appreciation to City Manager Pamela Reese, Chief of Police Steve Petrilli, and members of the Corporation's Counsel's Office for taking the time to meet with the ACLU to talk about our concerns about this measure. We appreciate the time and attention you paid to this matter. Unfortunately, the new version being presented to the Council this evening continues to miss the mark in the view of the ACLU, especially given the events that the ordinance is intended to address. The new version continues to contemplate oppressive measures to address a small number of incidents. Moreover, all of the behaviors contemplated in the draft, from public consumption of alcohol and cannabis to the destruction of public or private property, already are covered by existing ordinances. This measure simply adds additional fines and penalties for some of this behavior because it relates to parties that caused problems in recent weeks and months. Specifically, we would raise 3 main concerns with the language in the new version of the ordinance. First, while much has been done to improve the definition of a nuisance gathering, the version the Council is considering tonight creates a threshold that is far too low for the penalties that attach. The ordinance appears to be triggered as drafted if one person is drinking alcohol in public and another person is using cannabis. This would be a nuisance gathering even if no one is engaged in any other destructive behavior. The new draft also does not mandate a dispersal order before issuing tickets to those being cited under the ordinance. The draft would be improved by mandating a dispersal order before tickets are issued, a practice that would be far more procedurally just. Finally, the penalties remain oppressive. The draft contains a minimum of a $1,000 fine for anyone cited under the ordinance, a fine that is overly burdensome for a young person or student. On top of the fine, anyone cited under the ordinance can be assessed unspecified public costs. What precisely are these public costs? The ordinance suggests they include the costs borne by the city for policing a nuisance gathering. This is especially harsh since we do not charge others, even those charged with domestic violence or other violent crimes, with the costs of policing and investigating the allegations against them. Using this threat only for parties is an overreach. As we made clear to the City of Normal officials when we met a few weeks ago, there already are ordinances and laws on the books to address disruptive behavior, measures that can be enforced on a targeted basis against those violating such laws. No one, including the ACLU, objects to the enforcement of those ordinances. This revised ordinance, in spite of the changes, is unwise and unnecessary. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kevin Dion.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin. I'll start by clarifying that this is my personal opinion and not the opinion of any group or organization. I spoke last time about how the first version of this law was an illegal attack on the First Amendment, attack on right to free speech, right? And that was mainly because of how it failed to define what a nuisance is. I'm still completely opposed to the passing of this ordinance, right? I read the new version. You did define what a nuisance is, and it's just a bunch of stuff that was already illegal. Things like firing a fire alarm, selling drugs, vandalism. This new law doesn't really address any of the root causes of why these pop-up parties were occurring, right? And one thing that I found particularly frustrating about how all of this has been addressed is the failure to acknowledge that this whole debate is very racially charged, right? Like, I'm a white person, and obviously I'm not central to this debate. That being said, the pop-up parties are planned and attended mainly by Black ISU students, and I think it's important we acknowledge race here because these pop-up parties are a direct result of like the socioeconomic issues faced by Black people in our town, right? There's 1,700 Black people students at ISU, and 800 of them were not there 10 years ago. Many of these students are on some sort of financial aid or scholarships, and many of them come from a less than stable economic background. All that being said, there's been a lot of dehumanizing language used about the attendees of these pop-up parties. Many of it is so vile and racist that it should never be repeated, but a lot of it's just dehumanizing, right? And a lot of and to me, the reason that these pop-up parties were popular was mainly because they were just cheap and walkable and in town, right? It wasn't some malicious attack on the town of Normal. And I don't know, ISU, despite its reputation as a party school, is a school that has very little for students to do. Outside of the school-approved frat parties that are exclusionary by their very nature and the expensive bars that require an ID, there's not a lot available socially for young people in this town, right? And I say all of this because there's very little consideration into why these parties were popular and literally no consideration for any sort of alternative. There's lots of ways the Normal City Council or ISU could try to provide some sort of place for Black communities to gather here. There could be some sort of effort to organize the opening of new concert venues, nightclubs, or any sort of alternative that would make more of an effort to cater towards the Black members of our community. Obviously, once again, I am white and not an expert on how to build some sort of alternative like this to the pop-up parties, and I think our city council should be more willing to engage with the attendees of these parties to find some sort of alternative. The city council's current plan of enforcing martial law against these parties will not solve any of these core issues. Cops do not solve crime. Investing into the community is the only proven way to reduce crime. All of the illegal things that occur at these parties will still happen, just in private. I know you've heard this a million times before, but it still needs to be repeated. Cops do not solve crime. Investing in communities stops crime. So many peer-reviewed studies exist at this point to prove this.
I'm going to ask
And-
you to finish up your comments. You're over your time limit.
Yeah. It's just gonna get, passing this law won't improve anything. It'll just simply sweep the problem under the rug.
Next speaker is Joseph Bloom.
Good evening. I'm Joseph Bloom. Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak to you tonight. I'm here to voice my opposition to the passing of this proposed ordinance prohibiting nuisance gatherings. I'm aware of this issue through my membership with the Young Democratic Socialists of America, but I come today because I'm also a concerned member of this community. I live here most of the year, and the things that happen here and the people who are here are important to me. Last time this ordinance was being voted on, I did not speak, but I was here to listen to the public comments and the comments made by council board members prior to voting on it. You all obviously know that you voted to table the ordinance and come back to it after revisions, but I was disappointed to see that not only were the problems we brought to your attention still present, but more have popped up. My main concern currently is how this ordinance will impact the unhoused people who live in our community. Even with the requirement of having 2 out of 11 of the qualifying offenses, which are all already illegal, and the need for approval from a supervisor to order a gathering to disperse, there is room for language in the ordinance to be misinterpreted and taken advantage of. The main qualifying offenses that concern me in this context are specifically the unlawful possession or use of a controlled substance, vandalism or destruction of property, criminal trespass, and throwing or placing objects. Is this ordinance about increasing safety if it makes it more likely for unhoused people in the community to be antagonized by police? In order to avoid the potential misuse of this ordinance, the groups of unhoused people in our community would need to isolate themselves from each other, something they have already been ordered to do before. This would be an infringement on their rights and a threat to their health and safety. Not to mention that if one of them is unable to avoid being charged for a nuisance gathering, the minimum fine of $1,000 would be unrealistic to expect them to pay. I believe it is possible that the ordinance as it exists now would decrease safety for unhoused people in our community. I want to close by urging you to truly think about how this ordinance may be misused. I understand that you want to protect this community, just like myself and everyone else who has shown up to voice their opposition to this ordinance. By proposing this as a solution to the problem you have deemed pop-up parties to be, you are ignoring the true issues at hand while simultaneously giving our community direct evidence that you will not listen to their concerns. The people who spoke against this ordinance and those who came to show their support will remember how you vote today.
Next commenter is Cassidy Wiskin.
Good evening. My name is Cassidy Wiscari. I am involved with the ISU chapter of the Young Democratic Socialists of America, and I would consider myself to be very involved here at ISU and throughout the Bloomington Normal community. Throughout my time at ISU, I have taken part in many peaceful protests, events, and various activities that could be considered nuisance gatherings, such as local concerts. These events have not only been essential to my college experience, but the overall culture of a young college community. I originally transferred to ISU from a private Christian university due to the overall feeling of disrespect regarding my right to free speech and assembly. I chose to transfer to ISU where I felt my rights would be protected and upheld. I don't feel so sure about that now. As a member of the YDSA, a student here at ISU, and a member of this community, I am thoroughly disappointed in the wording of this ordinance. While I do appreciate the changes that have been made, some of the original problems are still present. Not only are the fines still extreme, but more importantly, the language is vague throughout the ordinance. Firstly, it is still unclear what would count as dispersing, and thus would be up to the discretion of the officer present, which will still leave room for discrimination. However, some of the most alarming wording is in B.2, stating that town officers, employees, and agents may take all steps necessary to remediate that public nuisance. This leaves far too much room for potential misconduct and does not include language that could be used to reprimand an officer who may use excessive force under the ordinance. There is also the issue of not clarifying what taking reasonable steps to prevent or shut down a nuisance gathering must look like. This leaves room for unfair prosecution and discrimination when deciding if reasonable steps were taken. Reasonable steps should at the very least be defined in the ordinance. Furthermore, all of the things that would allow something to be declared a nuisance gathering are already illegal, which is a critique that you all received the last time this ordinance came to the table. With all of these things considered, I strongly urge you to vote no on this ordinance and consider the rights and protections of all normal citizens. Thank you.
Next speaker is Caitlin Bonds.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Bonds. I come to talk to you guys about this ordinance. This ordinance is redundant and expensive. You're proposing a $1,000 to $5,000 fine for an amalgamation of laws that already exist. I understand that the idea is to disincentivize party planners by essentially threatening the loss of revenue. But this is unnecessary. Parties can already be suppressed through these existing laws and fines, and with much of these offenses, where you see one, you see them all, such as illegal possession of consumption of cannabis, alcohol, controlled substances, assault, battery, or vandalism. So if you want to discourage people from throwing these pop-up parties, which we have seen less and less of, the laws punish them already, are already there. This ordinance is redundant, and the only thing that changes is the layers and layers of fine that could potentially cripple many attendees here. With this language of ordinance, fines could be applied up to $5,000 for anything designated as a nuisance, but on top of this, people could further find the outlined cost reimbursements as crippling. This has the only potential to disproportionately affect low-income populations. Something punished by fine will always be heavier consequences for low-income individuals than higher-income individuals. If an active or punishable by money, it becomes illegal only for those that can't afford to pay it. Then, by nature, this targets low-income populations of normal, and it leaves dangerous parties of high-income individuals unaffected. I come to ask you guys, is this more about keeping us safe or having more money in your wallet? Thank you.
Next speaker is Viraj Patel.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our public comments today, and thank you also for listening to some of the comments we made in the previous city council meeting, as well as in our ensuing conversations and proposing this new ordinance. I think I'm in line with most of the changes that you propose. I like some of the definitions are a bit more clearer than they were before. I think there is a little less latitude given, a little less discretion given to law enforcement in terms of what counts as a nuisance gathering and all of those things. So I think those are some strengths of this ordinance. And I also want to echo previous comments about the removal of the sound amplification good clause as well as description. I think that is a wise decision to do that, and I applaud you for that. There are a couple questions that I do have that I would love to hear about. The first one being, I like the distinction that is being made between a nuisance ordinance as well as a nuisance gathering and a nuisance participant. One thing that I'm not clear about is is a nuisance gathering defined by just any 10 people who are present, but one person is engaging in some of those behaviors? Does the entire gathering then become a nuisance gathering, or does it need to be 10 nuisance participants to make a nuisance gathering? I think that distinction perhaps may be something wise to consider, because sometimes we may have, just one rowdy family member who won't listen to anybody, and then the entire party is considered a nuisance gathering. So that may be something I would love to hear about. I think other than that, I really do like most of the definitions. They're a bit more clearer, and I once again thank you for listening to us today, as well as to some of the previous comments which have been made. I also want to echo the comment that was made by the member of the ACLU. Perhaps it may be a good idea to include a dispersal order before the giving of fines. I think that may be something that may even add to what you're intending to do with the ordinance, right? The goal of the ordinance is to stop nuisance gatherings, and I think that the dispersal order is a logical step in that particular process. So I think that may be a good decision as well. But I do think that the new definitions which are there, they're a bit more clearer, which then gives the city council a bit more direction in terms of studying whether the ordinance works or doesn't work in the long run as well. So thank you so much for the time today and for listening to some of our comments. We appreciate it.
Next speaker is Rebecca Mangles, I think.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Mangles. The proposed nuisance ordinance is an attack on the right to assembly, a protected right under the First Amendment. Furthermore, the ordinance is redundant and repeats a law which already exists. All of the 11 activities listed in the ordinance are already illegal. Therefore, why the need for this new ordinance? What this ordinance is essentially saying is that we may gather, as long as it does not include what is a vague definition of criminal activity. However, as someone involved in activism, I notice how this ordinance puts at risk the organizers of an activist event. There would be no way for a protest organizer to escape the requirement of taking reasonable steps to prevent a nuisance gathering. In the event that a peaceful protest is ongoing, but someone from outside the group arrives and does something illegal, this ordinance would make the organizers of the event responsible for an action they didn't even commit. Furthermore, if someone is organizing an event of any kind, there is no way for the organizer to prevent attendees from committing criminal behavior. This ordinance is undemocratic and a threat to our right to assembly. Furthermore, it increases the likelihood that police will be surveilling public gatherings. I personally don't want more police surveillance. Statistically, police surveillance does not create more safety in communities. What does promote safety is allowing citizens to assemble and express their thoughts. That is what democracy looks like. Furthermore, if you would prefer that your community is safer, please regulate guns rather than public assemblies. The actual problem I believe you're trying to address is the shooting at a pop-up party. Many citizens were not involved in the incident, and regulating guns would have helped prevent it. Ordinances like this will not.
And next speaker is Ezra Meenan.
Hello, my name is Ezra Moonen. Before I begin, I would like to thank every council member and citizen who has decided to attend this meeting, and thank the council for the opportunity to speak. I would like to state that I greatly appreciate the revisions made to the original ordinance. However, I believe the nuisance ordinance is still unconstitutional as it violates U.S. citizens' First Amendment rights to assembly. To quote directly the government website for Congress, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I love the town of Normal. I have lived here since birth, but I will not stay or encourage others to stay or visit if the local government insists on passing unconstitutional ordinances. This law could and likely will not only kill many cultural and enjoyable aspects of our town, such as the music scene, despite the noise revision, which as someone in a band could be devastating, but it could prevent people from protesting, which is again a right. Local authorities will be the ones deciding what is considered a nuisance, and that does not sit right with me considering the recent spike in police brutality and prejudice. There is no way to ensure that police will make the correct decisions when choosing who to punish. Citizens of Normal have already spoken out against this, and all it resulted in was a postponement and promise to amend the law. I hope with all of my heart that this meeting will turn out differently and that our officials will listen to us. All of these reasons are why I do not feel that this law is appropriate to pass. Thank you for your time.
We move to the omnibus agenda, items that will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Looking around.
Move approval.
Second.
Items on the omnibus agenda tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of November 18th, 2024. A report to receive and file town of Normal expenditures for payment as of November 27th, 2024. A motion to approve the year 2025 town meeting calendar. A resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement for the police shooting range facility with the city of Bloomington. A resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA Act, grant agreement with Mid-Central Community Action Incorporated. A resolution to waive the formal bidding process and accept quotes totaling $122,956.05 from CDW for the purchase of Dell computers. And the resolution authorizing the execution of a conditional right of entry license with Dan Kelly. Please call the roll.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Coos?
Aye, those items are approved. First item of general orders, and actually only item of general orders, is an ordinance prohibiting nuisance gatherings and regulating park property.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Reese,
Thank you, Mayor. As a reminder to council, this is an issue that we started discussing a little over a month ago with a special work session, followed up with a council meeting, a second meeting in November where we presented a draft ordinance to you, heard from a number of public commenters, their concerns. And since your November 18th, I believe it was November 18, since that meeting, we've had a number of conversations with various stakeholders regarding an ordinance that we would present to you. Does this proposed ordinance address every single issue we've heard to everyone's satisfaction? Absolutely not. We don't have a law that's going to make everyone happy. This is a proposed law that addresses a significant quantity of the items that we've heard, specifically the number of people gathering, amplified sound. We heard that a number of times in terms of a concern, and other matters. Conversations that have taken place have been with some of the public commenters from the last meeting, with registered student organization leaders at Illinois State, with Illinois State administrators, with neighborhoods. We did go out and host a meeting at an elementary school with a neighborhood that was involved, that was nearby the pop-up party of late September. ACLU, League of Women Voters, and others. So we've heard from everyone. Not everyone. We've heard from a number of people, a number of stakeholders that had concerns. And I believe the draft presented to you tonight is a very reasonable, sound ordinance that we can feel confident in to try to address and minimize the risk of pop-up parties in 2025 like we experienced in 2024. There are some who believe our proposed ordinance don't go far enough in terms of addressing the matter. Staff is certainly prepared to talk about details of the proposed ordinance. The council report that was included in your packet identifies the changes from the November draft to today's draft. We can certainly respond to any questions specifically in regard to that and those proposed changes. I will point out just a few things in terms of some of the comments we heard. Specifically, the proposed ordinance does in fact address a dispersal. The police law enforcement officer mandating or directing attendees at a particular event to disperse. That is addressed in, I believe, Section B of the proposed ordinance, but there are a number of other things. So definitely, you know, I can't say that everyone's going to love this, but that's a law, and I don't know of a way to present a law to council that is going to make everyone happy. I do believe this is a very good attempt to address the problems we experienced in the fall while still trying to address a number of the matters that we heard in November. And with that, I'll be asking council members to share your thoughts and concerns and questions that staff can address each of those specifically.
Ms. Smith?
I appreciate everyone who's turned out tonight, and I also appreciate all the participation in getting feedback from local groups between the first meeting when this was discussed and helping to revise the ordinance to the form that you see here tonight. I too had questions, and I'll share with you some of the ones that Ms. Reese didn't particularly address in her summation or introducing this. Bear with me. So I was concerned about, at the previous session, some community groups that were accustomed to gathering were concerned about the fact that under that previous wording, even their meetings and assemblies that had been done for years would come into question. And now, with the revision, it does not oppose gatherings of any size so long as the nuisance activity isn't taking place at those gatherings. So community groups that had been meeting in the past would continue to be able to meet now. One of the things I didn't bring up was the music issue, and as she pointed out, the whole idea of playing music is removed from the language here, so there's no prohibition against having gatherings where musicians are playing, people are enjoying that activity, so that was a change for the better, I believe. I've heard a number of people indicate that they thought it was duplicative. Well, the entirety of the new ordinance is not duplicating any existing regulation. So we have brand new wording to address a specific concern that we've had. And one of the things that I feel, and the reason such ordinance is something that is important, is people behave differently in a group than they do when they're acting as individuals. It is frightening to anyone to be confronted with a large number of people that can be easily swayed in one way or another. And it was not just the existence of guns, although guns certainly led to a fatal situation. But if it is expensive, then in some respects, this ordinance is achieving the desired result of making people consider carefully whether or not they want to organize for profit a gathering of individuals that the repercussions of their actions may come back and affect their wallet. And so they're having that deterrent effect is achieving an outcome that is desirous to prevent the activity, not to line the town's budget. Believe me, we hope that we aren't gathering any funds from these kinds of activities. And I would just ask, as much as several people highlighted that this was targeting specific groups and individuals, I'm asking if individuals are considering stereotyping the reactions of the police. Because in my experience with the Normal Police Department, the officers are acting in professional manners. There was an incident it might at this point been several years ago, where there was an individual who was acting out in a major intersection. It was obvious he was under the influence of something, but no weapons were drawn, nobody was injured, nobody was hurt, and the individual was successfully brought under control and brought into where he could receive whatever help he needed. That's my experience with the Normal Police Department. And I am in favor of this ordinance because, as some members have said, it's not perfect, but I don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good. I'd like to have something that can be used to first act as a deterrent, but secondly, to provide a tool that will allow Normal to assure the citizens that when there are large gatherings, there is a way to prevent it from getting out of hand. Thank you.
Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you to those of you who have gathered here today, and for sharing your thoughts. I also thank staff for working with many in the community to work on this ordinance. My first question I'm asking because, and I'll have a follow-up after I ask this question. Section 1 of the ordinance, after it reads, "Now it be ordained by the President and the Board of Trustees of the Town of Normal of Illinois." Section 1 is a part of the ordinance, correct? That whole Section 1 section, where it says findings and purpose.
Yes, Section 1, Section 2, I believe.
That's correct.
That all goes into the law.
Okay. I say that because Section 1 actually outlines several things that have been stated tonight. And so maybe I was unclear on a few statements. Like Section 1B, it says the purpose of this ordinance is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare by limiting gatherings that foster illegal activities. The town recognizes that the United States Constitution protects the freedom of association relating to intimate association or the engagement in activities protected by the First Amendment speech. So I'm confused. Maybe my understanding is incorrect, but I'm confused of us being accused of not protecting that when it says in Section 1B that we are protecting it. Did I read that correctly?
I believe you did, and
Okay.
I'll defer to the Corporation Counsel and Mr. Day. And I think the last sentence is important. Nothing in this ordinance is intended to apply to or otherwise limit any gathering at which illegal activities are absent. So
Is
your
my
understanding is correct.
understanding is correct, or am I wrong in my understanding of that?
No, you're right. That's correct.
Okay. There's another one in here that I want to make sure that I understood correctly, or maybe there was something missing in my understanding. Nuisance gatherings endanger public safety, which is what we're trying to address, correct? So nuisance gatherings are what we're addressing, and we're defining them and saying that they endanger public safety. So by necessitating a significant deployment of police personnel often including assistance from neighboring agencies, and this heavy demand restricts, and it goes on. But I took that as we're calling out that it's an endanger to public safety, correct? So that's also what would consider,
Correct.
okay. I'm going somewhere, just follow me here for a moment. The next thing that I noticed was, I know probably can't see it right now. I'm trying to make, oh, here it is. The town has a significant government interest in protecting the physical safety of all people in the community and protecting public and private property from vandalism and destruction, and preventing circumstances that foster and encourage illegal activity, and preventing the disruption to the peace and well-being of the community, and recouping the costs of the nuisance gatherings from those responsible. The reason why I bring that up is because my understanding, we paid a significant cost for property damage as well as time that was spent for the cleanup, which is another reason why we talk about the money aspect, correct?
That is correct.
Do we know a figure about what that cost was, which includes the cost of what we paid staff as well as for damage repair?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to look at Mr. Day to see if he recalls a number. In terms of a number, I think the only thing I saw at one point was the cost to the Parks and Recreation Department to clean up the parks after the fact, not a law enforcement or a staff cost. But, Mr. Day, do you recall?
Yeah, the only numbers we looked at, and I don't have a specific number. I know we had a 16 hours worth of cleanup for one of the parks that it took to clean up. We haven't run the cost for like police or fire responses.
Yeah, not so much as, that's a good number to have too, but just to know that there was 16 hours of cleanup time required, which those are dollars, correct? That taxpayers pay to make sure that that amenity has been restored, correct?
Correct.
Okay. While I ask these questions, they're important to me because with any asset we have, like I care about my home and I make investments to that, our properties are our investments in this community. We have not addressed how we should deal with things that are disruptive to the amenities we have or our assets we have. And unfortunately, these situations is what brought it to our attention to realize that maybe we need to have some way to address those issues. While this may not, quote unquote, be perfect, I do feel like there are things that we can glean from for this. I don't feel like it's an attack on a group of people. It is us finding a way to make sure that we have some parameters, or more so, I would say, a way to ensure that our properties and our assets are being respected. And when they are disrespected, we have a way to address that issue. I believe, and that was my understanding in our very first initial conversation when we had our time or work session, is to address that also while talking about what have been some of the additional things that have been the issue. But I think more so than anything is we did need to have a look at how we manage our assets and how do we manage when people inappropriately use our assets. And so I thank you all for doing, the best for trying to address everyone's concerns and issues. I think with sometimes legislation, if we see that something is not working out to the result we wanted, we can always come back with that conversation. I have not seen where this council has not done that. We have done that in the past, but I do believe this is a good start. And it's definitely a better version than what we have seen a few weeks ago. Thank you.
Mr. Byers.
Thanks, Mayor. I think it works now. Thanks, Mayor. And first off, want to give a couple thank yous. One, want to thank all the folks in the crowd tonight that participated. Unfortunately, wasn't here at the last meeting, so I got a lot of your emails. I know many of you are here in the crowd tonight. We appreciate having a lot of engagement on this issue. So thank you all for being here. I also want to particularly thank staff. I know in conversations with staff over the last few months, they've had a lot of feedback all over this issue. As Ms. Reese said, I think they've had people, and we've gotten emails from people that said, make it more stringent. We've also had people say make it less stringent. And so I appreciate the really tough position that puts folks in when you're trying to draft a policy for an entire community. So I appreciate that. And one thing too, I just want to be very clear. Our intention here is not to shut down culture, shut down music, shut down concerts, shut down political speech. That's not why we're here. Right? I enjoy all of those things about our community personally. I would not want to take those away from anyone in our community, nor myself. So all of those are all things we want to continue to happen in the town if normal, but we're just trying to address some very specific issues that have come up, particularly this past year, and ensure that we have a safe community. And a couple of the other comments I had actually I think got addressed. Ms. Reese brought up the dispersal order aspect, so I'll move on to my a couple of other questions I had. And this is a question for staff more generally. And I was trying to jog my memory because if I recall, was it right that in some of the kind of pop-up parties that happened over the summer, I think I recall some of the concerns were about music or noise that happened at those pop-up parties. Do I recall that being correct?
That is correct. That is correct. That generally occurred late in the evening at the parks, from the park space. So in the proposed ordinance, the parks will close at 9 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, and really bringing that up because personally, I think we could have I would have liked to see massaging a little bit more on the noise. I think there should have been something in there about noise because I know that is a concern. But to my colleague's point, I'm trying not to let perfect be the enemy of good. So I can accept that change, even though I think there was something we could have done there. I think that the main question and concern I really have that I wanted to get to is in Section H, exceptions. I like that we outlined some exceptions. I think that this is progress for the ordinance. So the first one I totally agree with because certainly someone who owns or controls a property could become an unintended consequence of this ordinance. That it might not be their fault that somebody chose to organize an event on their property. So I agree with that. And certainly number 3, I also agree with that. What I'm reading this as is if a police officer gives a warning or says, hey, let's stop doing this, we're not going to punish people who stop engaging in the activity. So I agree with those. But I have some trouble understanding and would ask staff to help shed some light on the thoughts there. Number 2, because the way I read it, it seems to contradict itself, where it says a person who organizes, promotes, sponsors, or hosts a gathering that has become a nuisance gathering will not be a nuisance participant if they took steps to prevent the gathering from becoming a nuisance gathering. To me, it just feels, and maybe I'm not reading it right, it just feels a little contradictory. If someone organized an event and it became a nuisance gathering, I don't see why it would make sense to exempt them from being a nuisance participant if they're the one that organized the event. So maybe staff could just explain a little bit the line of thinking.
Sure, that's a good question. I think it's more directed to the unintended consequence of hosting a party. No one intended for the event, the activity to become a nuisance gathering, and the person who organized, promoted, sponsored the gathering, did their very best to actually maintain decorum and limit the risk of it getting out of control. So, but I will defer to Mr. Day and Mr. Crisagrosa to further explain the differences.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what Ms. Reese said. So the goal here is really to prevent these parties from getting out of control, to keep them from becoming a problem. Part of what we want to do is foster cooperation from those involved to stop them before it becomes something worse. So we're looking for the cooperation. So this was for somebody who organizes a party and they had no idea that people were going to show up and it was going to turn into a nuisance party. So they took steps to stop the party, to call the police, to work with the police in breaking it up, to cooperate with us fully in it not becoming a bigger problem. We want a way out for them so it's not a you immediately get a fine if you organized a party, because then your incentive is to do everything you can to help stop us from stopping that party, because then you're going to get a ticket. So we want to provide a way for them to cooperate with us to alleviate the problems of that party without getting a ticket.
Yeah, thanks. I may come back to this one. Just my last comment is that, going back to the work session and kind of the broader thinking that we had here, I felt that in our work session, some of the conversations I had with colleagues, that the deterrent we wanted to be the strongest was for the organizers of these types of events. And so I do struggle with that number too, and I may come back to that, but I'll let some of my colleagues speak before.
Ms. Lorenz?
Sure, thank you. I thought a couple of good questions were raised by our commenters tonight, and let me see if I can find them. I know it's been brought up a couple of times, but this concern about the disbursement, does it in fact precede any fines that could be issued? So that's the difference between, I think it's items C and D. Because it says order to cease and disperse, so on and so forth, and then D is about the fines. So what is the trigger to levying the fine?
Right, there's two situations in terms of the order of dispersal. Section C on page 7-6 and also section 3 on page 7-8. So Mr. Cursagrosa or Mr. Day, do you want to talk about each of those situations in terms of the process? Because I believe the order to disperse, if the disbursement happens, then there's no fines issued. The goal is to disperse the party, and that's the hope, that the party ceases and people move along and no harm, no foul kind of thing.
Okay.
So, Mr. Cursagrosa, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. We have crafted this and updated it in a way to really get at the people that are committing the bad behaviors. So no one can get a ticket for being at a nuisance gathering if they're not either committing one of the qualifying acts, or if an order to disperse has been issued and they don't disperse. So really everyone that's going to get a ticket has to make some active choice, whether they choose to attend and not disperse, or attend and commit a qualifying act, or promote one of these nuisance gatherings. We're not trying to sweep up the innocent bystanders that might be there and not aware of what's going on elsewhere.
Okay, so that probably leads me to my next question that I thought was raised. Can you define the difference between the nuisance gathering versus the nuisance participant? When is a person a participant that may be at that gathering?
Sure. So the definition of participant kind of gets at what we were just discussing, which is the gathering is 10 or more persons where 2 or more qualifying offenses occur. It could be one person committing 2 offenses. It could be 10 people committing 2 different offenses. But again, the nuisance participant, what triggers someone being a nuisance participant is either them committing the offense or them being at a party after it's been ordered to disperse and not leaving, or promoting or planning the event as well.
Okay. So now I'm going to broaden my comments, and that is, I wonder if this ordinance is in fact a duplication of existing ordinances, just with a higher fine. I mean, is that what we're looking at here, or can you distinguish it more than that?
Sure, I think we can. Mr. Cursagrosa kind of distinguished that earlier, just in a private conversation with Ms. Smith and Mr. Day. Either one of them, I think, can explain that, how it's different than current ordinance.
Sure. So we use a lot of current ordinances as our triggers, so that we have something that we're familiar with applying, and that people are, generally assumed to be aware of. What's different is the mechanism at which we approach these. We could ticket people for the individual behaviors or the qualifying offenses. What we have found, or what police has found to be the case, is that that's kind of an after-the-fact approach and can be difficult to use when these gatherings start to gain steam and gain increase in size. And so this nuisance gathering ordinance allows us to approach these more on the front end before people, before the party has gotten too large and too out of hand, to try and stop that sort of snowballing into an out-of-control party. And so it allows the police to order dispersal, which generally would not be available to just a run-of-the-mill party where underage drinking might be occurring, for instance. And then when those otherwise perhaps innocent participants do not then disperse, they then become an active participant in the nuisance gathering and then can be ticketed in that way.
So if I'm a participant doing illegal behavior, but I disperse, I'm off the hook?
No, if you're a participant and you're committing some of the behaviors, you could face a ticket if you're part of a party that is 10 or more people where not only your behavior is happening, but someone else is conducting one of the other.
So that's where one of the existing, let's say I'm underage drinking. I'm a participant at this nuisance, but I disperse, go home. But they can follow me, or they can somehow find me and say, you were at that party, and now they can put an ordinance, or they can put a fine on me for underage drinking?
They could, yeah, I mean, you could face a ticket for underage drinking after the fact currently. And if you attended a nuisance gathering and were a nuisance participant, so you participated in one of the qualifying offenses, and then nonetheless dispersed, I don't know if the police would then issue you a ticket, but you could, again, you would be a nuisance participant at that point. You were at a nuisance gathering, you committed one of the qualifying offenses, so you could face a ticket after that.
For both, I could have both a nuisance violation and the underage drinking.
No, I don't think the intention is to double dip like that. No.
Okay, all right. I want to go back to where we started on this and what was the original aim, and I think some points have been made on that already. But as I recall, the ordinance was intended really to be a deterrent. And I remember asking Chief Petrilli, maybe in the work session, if we had something like this on the books, would that have changed the arc and the trajectory of the pop-up party that was the most egregious with the violent behavior? And the answer I recall was no, it would not have changed anything. So the follow-up to that was, so this is basically a deterrent. And a deterrent being that it's putting a line in the sand or a stake in the ground to say, we're aware of these pop-up parties and we are not wanting to have them come to our community, and we're going to levy stiff fines. So the idea is a deterrent. I am okay with it being a deterrent, but I also don't feel like it's sufficient. And what do I mean by that? I'm still concerned that a pop-up party could happen. And do we have the practices in place as a community? Are we doing the drills or the tabletop exercises that would allow us to handle not just if, but when, even if we had this deterrent ordinance on the books? I don't know if this is happening now, if we're doing these sorts of drills, and perhaps this is a question in here, are we doing some kind of proactive planning and prepping for these situations with area agencies? Because I get it, you have 1,000 people at this event, and even if you took every sworn officer and put him or her on that, the numbers aren't good. You're still outnumbered probably 10 to 1. So what is it that we're doing proactively to watch for signals that are telegraphed out there that this may be coming? Number two, are we doing any kind of preparatory work to know what to do for mutual aid and who does what, and setting up, the disaster response? What are we doing in that regard?
Well, I can't specifically talk to the details of how the normal police department is training for this, or even partnering with their other law enforcement agencies, while I know that they certainly train together on lots of different matters, probably tangentially similar to a pop-up party, but if you're talking about crowd control issues, they're very well trained. I think Chief Petrilli has talked to us about that, I believe at the work session. I think just taking one step back, the issue about this particular proposed ordinance, should it be adopted, minimizes the risk of a gathering of another 800 to 1,000 people being unruly and having the behavior that we had this past fall. The point was, what steps can we take, or what policies and laws can we put in place to try to reduce the possibility of a group of people getting that large? And with this proposed ordinance, and council might recall, the first draft that we gave you a month ago was pulled from municipalities across the country that have adopted a similar ordinance to what you saw a month ago. So this is a more normal specific ordinance rather than something that we saw in municipalities nationwide. In this particular ordinance, what we're hoping is that it allows the normal police department to respond well in advance of a gathering getting so large and becoming a nuisance, if that's helpful. Otherwise, I'm not sure I
Yeah,
can respond specifically to your question.
Yeah, I guess I'm wanting to know, are we doing anything or planning to do anything that will prepare us for this unique evolution of crowd control? What are we doing in the form of anticipating, watching through detective type of activities, watching for anything that's being telegraphed out there that this is going to happen, A, and then B, what are we doing to prepare for handling these situations such that it doesn't get out of control, even with this ordinance on the books, because the ordinance is only really a deterrent. Once the thing happens, now, how are we positioned? That's why I say the ordinance alone really isn't sufficient. It's a deterrent at best. But what are we really doing to make sure that the assembly, however it is being conducted fairly and as part of our constitutional rights, versus when it goes beyond into something more illegal, how do we respond as a community? What are we doing to be prepared for that?
I'm going to ask you to hold that. You hit the 12-minute mark on
Okay.
comments. And I'll go to Mr. Preston. I think it's a fair question, but I don't think it's a question we're going to be able to address tonight. I think it's a broader question that we should have with staff and the council. Because it's a very valid point that we look at it that way, but I don't think we're going to have any answers tonight on that. Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. So I will start off by thanking everyone who is in attendance this evening. I'm sure there are some similar faces to those who were here a month ago when we addressed the first iteration of this ordinance, as well as some new faces here tonight. But nonetheless, I appreciate the engagement. Thanks for being involved in your community and issues that are coming before your council here at the town. I also like to thank town staff and the many community organizations and the Normal PD who have been taking the issue that we are working to address very seriously, being proactive in trying to address it effectively, and bringing in community stakeholders in a way that what leaves here, assuming that something does pass, if it does, is something that ultimately addresses what we're trying to address, but protects everything else. And so I want to, Ms. Reese kind of highlighted it in her comments a few minutes ago, but I'd like to just read, if I may, a little blurb that's in our council packet that is to the public, but talks about this issue just as a level set for what it is we're trying to address, a reminder. So earlier this year, the town was racked with a series of large and unruly gatherings that threatened the community's health, safety, and well-being. Most of these gatherings happened at town parks, resulted in vandalism and damage to property, illegal drug and alcohol use, fighting and other violence, trespass, and other disruptive conduct. Things escalated on September 29th with a party of more than 1,000 people that started at Fairview Park and moved across Main Street, blocking the street and shutting down several private businesses. During that party, 2 people were shot, resulting in the murder of one and the very serious bodily injury to the other. That is what we are working to address here. That is the intent behind this. I think that what came to us originally a month ago had that spirit rightly, but also unintentionally swept up with it. Live music gatherings, private family and friend get-togethers, the First Amendment and First Amendment rights, as was rightly pointed out by a number of people who were in attendance at that meeting, and themes that we continue to hear. Coming forward to tonight, the revised iteration, I would like to commend town staff. I think that it's can be somewhat of a delicate task trying to find the right way to still address what we're trying to address, but also make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, everything else is protected. First Amendment rights being the primary. What has come before us, I think, is a very workable solution. I would like to commend staff on this thing, and I think that it is, to steal a phrase that's been used here tonight, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I would like to think that hopefully the intentions of the town on this are clear and focused, and that this ordinance presented to us is aimed in that direction. Thanks.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. First off, thank you to everybody's here. I appreciate everybody coming here. It's not the easiest thing in the world to come up and sit in front of us and give us your thoughts and input, particularly if you feel like it's not in line with what some of the thinking is going on up here. So whatever the outcome of this ordinance, good, bad, or indifferent from your perspective, we appreciate your input. Clearly, it's had a positive impact on what's happened. Changes happened from the original version to what is done today. So what we're seeing is democracy at work. It's not pretty, it's messy. It stumbles along and gets cuts and bruises and all the like, but hopefully it keeps moving forward is the objective here. Whether you spoke this time or last time, you've had a positive impact, and I want to make sure that we all keep that central. I agree. I think at the top I want to say in no way is our intent to limit culture or enjoyment of our community. I was here as an undergraduate. There's a little thing called the beer riots that happened when I was here as an undergraduate. I wasn't part of that. I can actually honestly say that. One of the people that wasn't. That was an unfortunate use of student voice, I feel. This is a much better use of student voice. And I was also here as a graduate student, so I'm a 2-time offender here at ISU. I appreciate the culture. I appreciate, although SIU had the distinction of being called the party school back when I was here, not ISU. So with that at heart, I appreciate, I didn't get to speak the first meeting, and so this is my first swipe at this. I really appreciate that, for the most part, everybody came here with the spirit of helping their local government to do something better. That is not always the case when people come here to talk to us. Sometimes we're called names. Sometimes some of the emails are interesting in what we see. For the most part, I really appreciate the respect and the desire to make our community better from everybody that's stepped up to talk to us tonight and during the first meeting. I personally appreciate some of the changes that are made. I'm not going to go through the details. A lot of it's been covered already, and I don't want to bore everybody in. Time is moving on. I do appreciate the clarity and definitions. I agree with some of the comments, particularly that some of the clarities and definitions will help us to monitor the impact of this ordinance going forward. So as we decide to look at it and see is it doing anything that we intended or not, we'll be able to shush that out. I appreciate that the ordinance listened to the concerns about amplified music. Clearly, that was very important to a lot of people, not only students, but also the arts, music, and culture in our community that we paid attention to. I'd appreciate that. I do want to make a comment that, and I think somebody already mentioned it already, but I think Ms. Harris may have addressed it, but that the fines were to address property damage and cost citizens for cleanup and replacing assets in our parks. I think the comment was made, it was about police and fire costs. I'm sure that was part of it, but it was that. Also certainly to act as a deterrent, as my colleagues have mentioned. The strongest concern, I agree with the comment, was a deterrent to organizers that were doing little or nothing to keep parties under control. Obviously, my colleague just read the information from our packet. That was our chief concern, is certainly preventing people from being hurt or killed, but to have everybody feel safe that they can go to a party and not suffer some kind of damage as a result of going to the party. What I appreciate about the change in that section is that we identify those responsible party organizers, or those that are attempting to be responsible, from those who seemingly are not. I think that was an important change and an important nuance for us to bring into the ordinance, so that we don't just blanket everybody who puts on a music concert or the like, but we can actually identify and work with those who are attempting to be responsible for it. I greatly appreciate that change. There's other things, but I won't dwell. Certainly, it's not perfect. You've heard the echo and that refrain. We even heard different comments about people's level of agreement or disagreement from the commenters in the audience. And so back to my original point, this is democracy. Some of you are going to walk out of here upset, some of you are going to be mildly okay, and some are going to be very okay, depending on the outcome. But for those reasons, I'm supportive of this. I do want to add some other thank yous at the end. I want to thank my colleagues for unanimously being willing to pause, to let democracy work, so staff could take time to go out in the community, listen to the various groups, and those people that didn't have groups, neighborhoods, schools, by proactively reaching out to them. So I appreciate colleagues, staff for making the time to do all those things. This is a bit of an unprecedented action that we've taken here, and I just want to make sure we don't lose that in all of this as well. And uncharacteristically of me, Mayor, I'd like to say thank you for taking the initiative at the last meeting to just put a pause and call for us to stop and take a break and take a breath and listen and meet with people so we could try to come up with something better. I appreciate your initiative and leadership on that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Byers?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Agree with everything all of my colleagues have said. I know we want to get to action here. Just wanted to re-bring up my concern, and I'll make a motion in a second. We don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good, but I also want to make sure that when we pass an ordinance that we don't have anything in here that unintentionally trips up the intention of the ordinance. And I do strongly believe that Section 2, subsection H, number 2. I don't support or agree with. Exempting organizers, promoters, sponsors, or hosts of a gathering that has become a nuisance gathering, or exempting them from the nuisance gathering ordinance. So I would just put forth as a motion to amend the motion that was made previously to remove just number 2 and leave the other exceptions. And I would put that as a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The ordinance is approved. We have one item of business tonight, presentation of a Smart Cities Initiative.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ms. Gadaraju is going to come forward. She is very passionate about our smart city journey, and we would like to take a little time this evening to give council and residents an update of where we are with our smart city initiatives. We have adopted a strategy a few years ago to move forward with digital and technology and doing our best digital, I guess, opportunities and doing our best to promote data-informed decision-making and data management. And there's been a lot of things happening with Ms. Gadaraju and the innovation and technology team. And I think it's worth taking a little bit of your time this evening to bring you up to speed on where we're at. So Ms. Gadaraju, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager Reese. And Mayor and Council, thank you guys very much for your time. I know that I have about 30 minutes, so I'll try to wrap this up within that time and leave for some questions. Okay. So the very first slide, it's not intended for my face to be up there. I'll tell you why that is up there. So every year we start our smart, sorry.
Yeah, can we get that door closed?
Can you hear me better now? Oh.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem, thank you. Appreciate that. So every year, we actually talk about the definition of smart cities, because when we say smart cities, it really means different things to different people. And for us, we've always embraced the definition that we've included in our comprehensive plan, where smart cities are those that can effectively use the power of data and technology to cater to the changing needs of its citizenry. I'm not going to read the rest of it because I do want to play this video here. I'm going to tell you ahead of time, it is entirely AI generated. It looks like me and talks like me, but it is my avatar doing the talking. So I do want you to observe closely to its lip movements and everything, so you know, I do have a point that I need to make after this.
Las ciudades inteligentes son aquellas que pueden utilizar eficazmente el poder de los datos y la tecnología para satisfacer las necesidades cambiantes de sus ciudadanos, resolver los desafíos actuales y futuros y crear nuevos servicios interesantes. En términos simples, una ciudad inteligente adopta la innovación para cambiar la forma en que el gobierno opera y brinda servicios. Se trata tanto de la mentalidad como de la tecnología.
So, as you can see, I speak fluent Spanish and can speak many other languages too. I'm just kidding. So it took me a good 5 minutes to put this together. So that is the context of our smart cities planning conversation today. So as City Manager Reese pointed out, you'll hear a lot that we talk about today about data and governance. And disruptive technologies like AI are cropping up a dime a dozen. So I've used HeyGen, which is one of the platforms, to do this. I'm sure there are many other platforms that can do a much better job. So when we first started talking in 2019 about smart cities, it was we are being proactive. Today, we don't have a choice. We absolutely have to take this more proactively.
Las ciudades inteligentes.
You don't need to see that twice. So this is a smart city maturity journey that we have embraced internally, that has been an accepted tool for internal auditing for communities when we started this process. You've seen this slide before. What we are showing when we did our INT strategic plan and smart city roadmap 1.0 in 2022, our goal was to be at level 3. And I'm very happy to tell you that we feel confident that we are at level 3. So what is this level on this strategic plan, and what is it that we are assessing in this process? So this particular maturity model looks at strategic intent. It looks at data maturity, technology architecture, governance, and citizen engagement. And in all of these, we have matured quite a bit. And hopefully in the next 30 minutes, I'll be able to show you through some project examples. And hopefully you'll agree that we've grown and matured. This one, we are very happy to report that Town of Normal ranked number 6 on Digital Cities Survey. And I know Mayor Coos and Councilmember Harris was at National League of Cities accepting that. Thank you very much. So what is this? What is Digital Cities Survey and why should we care about this? So Digital Cities Survey is a survey that is conducted by GovTech, and it's in its 25th year. So this is a survey that has been going on for a long time, and 2024 is Town of Normal's first year submitting our application to it. So what does it do? Excuse me. So this survey invites U.S. cities and towns and consolidated governments to participate, and it facilitates internal conversations about holistic government, IT best practices for operations, innovations, and workforce planning. However, the survey is very similar to our smart city journey that we are on, and it focuses on the big picture of operations, civic transformation, and recognizing cities utilizing technology to strengthen security, enhance transparency, digital privacy rights, and digital equity. And most importantly, finding innovative ways to support social solutions for social challenges facing cities today. So that is one of the reasons why we took the time. It's a very extensive survey. As you can see, it is 10 different categories, and each category has I want to say 1 million questions, but I'm sure it's only 100. This is an external yardstick for us. So the previous measurement tool is helping us grow and mature internally. So this yardstick helps us really compare ourselves to similar-sized communities. As data and technology is evolving, it is very easy for us to think we're doing the right thing. But a yardstick like this helps us make sure that we are, in fact, growing appropriately. So what it also helps us do is number 6 is not the place we want to be in. We want to continue to improve. So it also gives us year-over-year progress with the projects that we are working on. This is, you'll hear me say working our plan quite a bit because Town of Normal's culture is that we don't just plan, we actually continue to work our plans. INT Strategic Plan and Smart City Roadmap 1.0 was a 3-year strategic plan from 2022 to 2025. We've been very active implementing that plan. And I will not have time to go through some of the highlights here, but I will use some examples from the plan to talk through how we achieved our maturity. And if you are looking at these 5 goals, but in 2022, these are the goals that aligned with the town's strategic plan at the time. So I think we can all agree on this. Technology powers smart cities. It is people who drive it forward. So technology alone does not solve any problems. If I don't get a chance to talk about specific people and departments throughout my presentation, I just want to say that that has been a huge change in why we matured to the level we've matured. Our workforce has grown and embraced technology. So a lot of projects that I'm going to highlight today are projects that are brought to us by our operations teams, brought to us from various staff throughout the town. And as town embraces technology, INT department, we love it. And that's our role. We love technology. But anytime a department is embracing technology, it's a lot of work on their part. It is a learning curve. So eventually, it'll help them, but initially, it is a learning curve. So people absolutely drive smart cities. So with that, I want to take just 1 minute to say thank you to my team who made a lot of these projects happen. So these group of people, they love challenges. So anytime they see one, they absolutely want to solve it. So I just want to give a shout out to my team. And then a list of infrastructure projects. Again, I will not bore you with the details of infrastructure projects. If you've heard me talk about smart cities in years past, you've heard me say we need to build a strong foundation. That strong foundation is our technology infrastructure. we absolutely spent a lot of time last 18 months or so building that infrastructure. So network infrastructure was practically built to today's standards with best practices of today. Like any other organization, we've evolved over time, and it's important for organizations to adjust every so often. With smart cities on the horizon, we needed to make sure our infrastructure is not only secure and resilient, but is also scalable as we advance into the future. The second one I want to point out is our storage infrastructure. So you will see that we have refreshed our on-premises storage infrastructure. Those of you who follow storage probably have a question like, why not cloud? Why on-prem? A lot of my data conversations actually will go a little bit into that because municipalities and organizations that went all cloud are rethinking their approach because we need to understand our assets very clearly before we have that approach. And I'll talk more as we go forward. So of course, we've improved our security infrastructure and our audiovisual infrastructure so we can all hear each other better. Another project that I want to highlight here is our RAB Road fiber project that is led by our Public Works and Engineering team. So this photo here, we are not planning fiber on RAB Road, but I did want to include this photo here because it is a collaboration between Illinois State University, State Farm, and Town of Normal departments. We visited University of Michigan's M-City Research Park. It is a transportation innovation research park to understand the types of advancements that they're looking into and what can be brought to our community. So with that, I'm going to switch to my second goal, Smart City Hall. This is where we spent a lot of our time. So internal services is, that's where we have a lot of paper generation. So the problem that we were trying to solve here is our employee onboarding was a paper-focused operation. And Town of Normal has always been really good at what the departments are doing. So paper-focused is not, there were a lot of efficiencies because of the procedures put in place. But, in 2024, that is not the most efficient process. And more importantly, it was creating issues like when we are trying to recruit younger staff, sending a DocuSign document for them to fill out is a much more smarter way to recruit the best employees that we can recruit than asking them to fill a bunch of papers. What it also did is it really did cut down on a lot of operational inefficiencies, redundancies, more importantly, improved visibility on where a particular application is and sped up the process. So this next one is a Parks and Recreations project that we worked with them on. So the numbers that you're seeing on screen is just an example, so those numbers are not, it's a test number. But what this is the problem we are trying to solve here is maintaining our parks in a stellar way with, resources are always going to be constrained, so how can we best direct our resources to the most needed parks? So Parks Department has a process where they work with Illinois State University class to assess our assets. Every park asset is assessed at various levels, cleanliness, safety, so on and so forth. This tool really is this dashboard is showing a compilation of many applications here, a survey that is filled out to assess each of the assets that is then ranked based on weighted criteria, and alerts that actually trigger to supervisors if a particular criteria is below what their accepted level is. So on a day-to-day basis, it's more actionable, but more importantly, the data at the year end is helpful for CIP planning, where they can better budget their funding. The next set of slides here are public works operations focused. So I have three examples here. So the very first one is waste management operations. So we are this application is based to effectively make sure people's waste and recycling is not missed. As you can imagine, that is very personal. And as simple as that sounds, I think these applications using our GIS tools, Dan Vallum is the supervisor in Public Works who actually brought these to our attention. And these would be, initial ask was to just have any new or infill drivers be able to easily do this. So driver would get in the vehicle, they would pick the date that the day they're doing and the truck they're using. And the application auto-populates a lot of other information that they need to do, which route they have to take, and their automatic vehicle locators within the vehicles will tell them where they are. So a simple tool for drivers, regardless of knowing the route, they could use this. But on the back end, the back office will know exactly where they were, which lanes were already picked. So when they get complaints about missed pickups, they know if what time the driver was there. So the second application here is more on pavement marking and maintenance. There are certain fields that I've highlighted here, but I'll tell you the problem that we are trying to solve here again is making sure the limited resources that we have available for that are being used effectively. So along with a lot of other information, the pavement marking here is tracking how many lanes they've marked and where they've marked. But more importantly, we've integrated a weather tool from CERA. What this allows them to do is once they collect enough data to see under which conditions their pavement management is performing best. So this is the last example. This one here is of the lift stations inspections. So the image that you're seeing up at the top that says Ironwood Lift Station, that was the previous process where they used to have a paper and pen, go around every lift station, write those down, and supervisor would then have to input all of that in an Excel spreadsheet at a later date. And as you can see, the data then doesn't become useful information at the right time. So the new set of applications really provide real-time tracking and real-time data entry. So as the field staff enter that information, it has automatic triggers and provides the information for supervisory staff. I'm going to make up a scenario here and say it's pouring out there and lift station recording came back at 0. That is an indication that something is not working right. I'm positive that never happens, but I'm just using that as a scenario. But that type of real-time information would allow supervisors to react to insights in a meaningful way. So switching gears from project examples to software onboarding, practically for every software onboarding, we make sure that it is useful for either the entire department, it's impacting citizens, or making sure that it can be used across multiple departments. The two I've used here to highlight are software that we've onboarded for communications. We've onboarded several applications for communications team. And going back to onboarding software, people have to invest a lot of time and resources to learning them to effectively use those. So I really want to give a shout out to communications team who uses tools to effectively do their jobs. So this includes improving accessibility, making sure that our digital assets are appropriately managed. And then switching to cultural arts department is a department that houses almost like 3 divisions: Normal Theater, Children's Discovery Museum, and Connie Link Amphitheater, along with a lot of events. And so several different functions all under one department. So the challenge there was they were trying to use different pieces of software. It was very difficult for them to gather all the data and effectively use that to serve citizens. So working very closely with cultural arts team, we were able to onboard agile ticketing system. This improved a lot of things, like I don't want to read each of those, but definitely ticketing, inventory, point of sale, so on and so forth. The second aspect of this is, it's one of the departments where managing donors is a key part of their operations. So making sure that they have a better system for that through Donor Perfect, but a system that effectively integrates with their CRM was important. With both of these, a lot of learning curves and departments effectively using technology to improve operations. So this one here, we talked about disruptive technologies and how fast they grow. Even without disruptive technologies, technology itself changes so fast. So INT team, we are a small team. We cannot do it alone. So we partner quite a bit to help us move forward with our plans. So the very first one is our managed services, and I want to thank the council and administration for support on those managed services. Because of that RFP and because of having a pool of managed services that we can, managed service providers that we can count on, we were able to kind of move forward with a lot of projects quickly. The second piece I will say is software onboarding and relationship management. And with all of these, I do want to thank legal department who works very closely with us, because contracts itself are crazy, but technology contracts are particularly not friendly. So I really want to thank our legal department who helped us not just standardize and streamline a lot of our contract language. It helped us put our contract language out first. So the technology partners worked on our terms, not so much we working on their terms. So we have been, several municipalities reached out to us on that. So thanks to our legal team for that. Software onboarding and relationship management. As we onboard software, it's not just technology coming in. We want to make sure that we are holding these software providers accountable to train our staff to make sure that we are maximizing the use of the tool and technology. We also are partnering with regional entities like State of Illinois. We serve on their cybersecurity task force. We are an active member of Gov AI Coalition, and I have a slide that I talk about Gov AI Coalition.
I do want to say, I think Ms. Gadaraju is being humble. She's the one that has been selected to serve on the state's cybersecurity task force, so thank you.
Thank you. So this project, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's been a publicly visible project, so appreciate the support of council on this one. So the problem we were trying to solve with this one is a parking system that was expiring very quickly. So we did a lot of research, and after extensive research, staff recommended moving forward with this future-focused app-based parking system. A lot of departments are involved, private parking providers, a passport parking system, and citizens and businesses. So this is one where, it is both rewarding and challenging, because it is easy to continue to deploy traditional technologies that are proved. Challenging because as we are bringing in newer technologies like this, where our stakeholder base is so broad, we have most of our users who are super happy, they're used to app-based systems, but we do have users who actually had concerns and challenges using this new system. We've listened intently, made sure that we've changed some procedures and accommodated changes. So the complaints and concerns have gone down significantly over the last year. But this is also, as we look at smart cities, a balance between how fast we could deploy to the maturity of the system. So we learn and evolve, and procedures being accommodated to these changing needs is extremely important. So as part of partnering to innovate, we partner very closely with our education institutions, Illinois State University, Heartland Community College, Parkland College for trainings. Our technology is only as good as people using it. So we make sure that we have our people trained. We have work groups to make sure that they have conversations. And I have few projects here, but in the interest of time, I'll probably skip those. But we take our trainings very, very seriously. So I do want to spend a few minutes talking about our data journey. And I want to give a huge shout out to our data I team. This is a cross-departmental team appointed by City Manager Reese in 2022. Its original purpose was Open Data Portal, and that was up and running. And then the team started focusing on a much bigger data journey, which is What Works Cities certification, which I'll talk about in a bit. But what I do want to talk about here is in these 3 years, this team became very cohesive as not just as a cross-departmental team, but collectively as a team that is focused and very committed to improving data journey. A lot of examples that I've showcased so far could not have been possible without this team and their contributions to it. So What Works Cities certification, what is it? So this is a certification process that is run by Bloomberg Philanthropies, recognizing that cities can perform better with better usage and effective usage of data. So it helps us improve our quality of data and helps to use that quality data to make policy decisions, allocate funding, improve services, and evaluate effectiveness of our programs. So why did we embrace this framework? Because it is a framework that already exists that takes into account so many other municipalities' experience, not just us trying to reinvent the wheel all over. So the pie chart that you're seeing here is What Works Cities comes in multiple certification levels, silver, gold, and platinum. It has a total of 44 criteria. You have to meet 22 to meet silver. We began this journey in 22 to improve our data and governance, and some of the examples, sample efforts that I've talked about here really contributed for us checking that box on those 15. We've submitted 4 more and waiting to hear back. Our goal is to be able to be What Works Cities Silver certified in 2025, and hopefully we can achieve that. And I will not have a chance to go through all of these efforts here, but I'm happy to talk about any of these efforts that you might want to learn more about outside of this presentation. But I do want to highlight this one by our administration team. Jacob from administration team put this together along with multiple other applications and sheets. So again, going back to we plan our work, we work our plan. So when the town adopts a strategic plan that is not sitting on shelves, City Manager Reese works with the leadership team to make sure that we are updating this progress to see where things are and as we are addressing this plan and eliminating any barriers on projects. So Open Data Portal, one of our very first project on data, which is, the intent is to drive transparency. And we have been very clear from day one, we don't want to just keep adding, we are not counting the number of data sets that are on our Open Data Portal as one of our KPI, because it doesn't matter. What matters is quality of our data sets. Is the quality of our data set the type of information that our citizens are looking for? So in the last year, we had nearly 32,000 visits to our Open Data Portal. The previous year was 25,000 visits and 85,000 since the launch. But that only tells us half the story. So visits to our Open Data Portal is for citizens who are curious to learn a little bit more. The purpose of Open Data Portals is to connect through APIs, and we don't track this as closely because it changes by the hour. But the bottom half of that slide is showing API calls on one of the data sets, the PD data sets, and at that particular time, I believe there are about 30 requests rate for that particular one. So depending on when people are trying to download, a lot of this is done programmatically. So our Open Data Portal is absolutely serving the purpose that we put it out to do. So where are we headed from here in the pipeline? a lot of data-focused open data portal conversations are happening. And a huge shout out to our clerks team. They have put in tremendous amount of work cleaning a lot of documents, trying to push as many of them out to public. More importantly, creating the gold for data, which is metadata. So for ease of searching and so on and so forth. So again, AI, it's here to stay. It is a disruptive technology that is going to grow like crazy. We are new to this. We are learning fast, but this is something that we cannot do alone. So GovAI Coalition is a coalition of municipalities across the United States. We are an active member of that. It is led by San Jose, San Antonio, so all the bigger municipalities who are much better resourced than we are, and we are taking advantage of all their resources. And absolutely a lot of governance coming down on AI-related stuff. So what's next? So we plan our work and we work our plan. We have a lot of planning to update. The very first plan was to make sure that we have a solid foundation. So it was an internally focused smart city plan to make sure that we have the right foundation. So we are ready to actually take on a Smart City 2.0 plan, which is a public-facing smart city plan. So starting next year, we will have a public engagement component on what does smart city mean to a town of Normal. And we also want to heavily align with our existing strategic plans, sustainability plans, other plans that the town has put in place and invested in. Includes Vision Zero, housing. So we want to continue our stronger alignment with town plans. We'll continue to work towards our What Works Cities certification to improve our data maturity and data journey. Definitely, INT strategic plan will be updated. This will be heavily focused on internal operations and infrastructure and security and those types of things. Last but not the least, we need to make a sandbox for ourselves. We need to give ourselves permission to innovate and experiment. So when disruptive technologies are knocking on our door, we are prepared. So that is what we will be planning. So that is all I have. My 30 minutes are up.
Thank you, Vasu. That was a very comprehensive.
Thank you.
A lot to digest there in 30 minutes.
Yes.
Questions or?
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation, and it's quite on time. As you mentioned, I did attend NLC, and we'll talk some more offline, but a lot of what it goes to show that we are at least trying to move in line with what's going on around us. Number one, we will get to number one.
Yes.
We will not stay at number 6, and I brought quite a bit back, and Ms. Reese and I have talked about some of those things. But what's interesting too, and I think you kind of talked about it, but something for us, 2 things I want to touch on, especially because this is something I also do outside of here. But number one is us understanding the difference between Gen AI and predictive AI and how they impact us differently, and how we look to utilize them both. I think that was one of the things that was missing, but I think that should be somewhere in our mindset because they are different. And a lot of people who are not in the space don't understand Gen AI and predictive AI are 2 different things.
Absolutely.
The other thing is you mentioned earlier, and I would never recommend a company wouldn't recommend it, so neither would I recommend it to the town, is ever going full cloud. So when you said that, that was very interesting to know that somebody decided to go full cloud. You always want to have some level of on-prem infrastructure.
Yep.
And still manage that. You should always have a balance. So I'm glad to see that we're thinking in that way. I don't think any company, private or public, is ready to go full cloud. That's just my thoughts on that. So I don't want us to feel like we're behind the 8 ball because we're making that decision. I think it's a wise decision right now. until we, and especially in this space, especially when you talk about public, until we find more accurate either pass options for us, which is platforms as a service for those who don't know, I think that's going to be our safest bet in this moment. But I'm very excited to see just us looking at that because one thing that wasn't mentioned that I think definitely our citizens should know is the greatest currency right now is data.
Yes.
And everything related to data has a cost to it. And so right now, whether we understand or not, we're paying for everything we do to data. And I think as ways we can evolve, it will, as we evolve in this space, we'll also see in the beginning, and anybody who's been in the space knows the front end cost is more than the long term. Your long term will actually save you lots and lots of money. So I'm looking forward to how we continue to evolve in this space, become better stewards with our data and managers of the data that we have, and how we can better utilize it to fully service our residents at a higher capacity and a higher level than what we have. So I'm very excited, and thank you for the presentation. The geek in me loved it.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Thank you. I had a couple of follow-up questions. One on the strategic plan slide. Is that something that, I think we've seen that before in demonstration. Is that something that is up and usable now, accessible by council, for example?
At this point, it is still an internal document. It's a dashboard for me and for the leadership team, so we're accessing that. At some point when the time is right and we can work it into council's meeting schedule, we will have a discussion about where we're at with the strategic plan progression. I thought initially we would have it sometime this fall, but then we had a number of other important topics to cover in work sessions, so that got delayed. So it is on my list of things to get scheduled so we can bring council up to speed with the status.
Okay. Second question had to do with parking changes. You said
Yes.
that there have been some interface changes, maybe user experience type changes. Can you elaborate on those?
Yep, I think those are less of user experience changes and more of the type of operational changes, like who uses a validation code to who actually, which time to which time do we actually set it for free, like planning commission meetings and those types of meetings. We want to make sure that we are not burdening a lot of people to put in a validation code and that type of thing.
Okay. I haven't seen some lately, but I know over the course of time since that parking system has been implemented that there have been some folks who have been frustrated by the amount of information that they have to put in. I mean, it's great if you already have it on your phone, but if you're that first-time app downloading it, it requires a lot of, keying in of your address and email and things like that.
Yes.
Are those being addressed?
Yeah, so Passport heard those, not just from us, but from across all communities they serve. And they are launching a new system for the guest services where all you would have to put is your email, and it would actually let you go through the process.
Okay.
I think, for people who just want to do as a guest checkout, that would be their option. And we will issue some more information about that as soon as that is more stable.
Okay, roughly time frame within the next?
I think they are working on it right now. It may even be in production as we speak.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Sue, for your always informative updates, and my tech geek always appreciates these. I appreciate this update specifically because it gives insight connecting our agenda items and our decisions to the operations in a concrete way, right? We see things come by and I read between the lines of what's happening from a specific agenda item and our yeses and nos to those things. But this helped us to understand the impacts and to operations and the nature and direction of those efforts to address a obviously very broad set of challenges that you're trying to tackle on a very wide shotgun approach. Tonight I learned things, which I'm always tickled about. Not so much about specific projects that were going on, but about the new challenges that we were facing. And the framework for how we were doing that as an organization, beginning to address those things as an organization, and the breadth of staff that's involved in addressing that. That's comforting to know, the structured approach and the structured thinking behind it, and how much staff is really, which has me, my next comment or I guess reaction to your presentation today is, it really seems that technology in our organization has evolved fundamentally from an underutilized resource to a valuable collaboration tool, to data transparency and data asset holders, to kind of a fundamental change in the global view of how this organization uses and drives data, to be as effective as we can as an operation in our mission to serve our citizens and deliver from the operations things of routes and measurements and asset utilizations and the like. This is the supercharged conversation that you and I had over the years. As I said, I learned something tonight and watching this over the last 10 years of how we've evolved. It's impressive. I have no doubt. I agree that with my colleague, Ms. Harris, that we will keep pressing and move along in this process. As was already brought up about AI, that was the only thing that I would have had any questions about, but I think rather than detail, just one comment would be, as we foray into AI and the different uses and purposes and ways to address it, that we are talking about that publicly, particularly if we're using citizen data and how and when and all those sorts of things, because there, as you, I'm sure, are well aware, lots of fear out there about what it is and what it can do, and the ills of it, and versus what we're going to do here in government. So that would be my only comment. But thank you. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Mr. Byers.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to first say thanks to Vasu and her entire department for all the work that you do. I think that the organization's ability to not just adapt, but also be proactive to the many technological changes that are coming, I think is crucial to the future of the organization. So I appreciate all the thoughtfulness here, and just thanks for all the work that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
I just wanted to get some further information about when a citizen is struggling to use these tools, what is their best route to seek help? Whether it's installing the app and getting it to work to get out of the garage, or if somebody wants to find out more about how to navigate the data portal and drill down and see stuff, what is their best recourse when they're seeking some help and want to talk to an individual, and instead of so that they can be hands-on as they're getting information?
Yeah, I think at this point, there is not one single phone number to answer all these questions. Like if they are specifically having issues with parking, hopefully nobody is getting stuck behind a gate because gates automatically open. But there is a phone number that Heartland Parking, who is the manager for our parking decks, they answer, they walk people through, and if they do not want to put their information in an app, they actually help them at their desk. So regarding anything online like open data portal and stuff, I think it is there as an additional tool for anybody who wants to kind of navigate on their own. But if people want information, they can always contact us. Like we still continue to get a lot of FOIA. So if it is coming through a FOIA, I think our clerks team does a pretty good job explaining how to access that information. Our websites, anytime people are stuck on it, Chatbot Hue is something that they use. So there are some tools there that help, but phone number is always available for people to call and get additional help. But it depends on what they're looking for assistance on.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks. Vasu, thanks to you and your entire team for this. As you were going through this presentation, it hits me that, it reminds me, I guess, that there is benefit internally to the organization of the town, but also in a broader sense, there's some real benefit that the people of Normal and the people who operate in Normal get from the continued advancements of you and your team as it relates to smart city initiatives here in Normal. And, kind of big picture, it just, I feel like it makes aspects of local government more easily accessible to people, more transparent, and certainly more efficient, as you highlighted here. So thanks for all this, and look forward to what comes next.
Thank you.
Further comments? Before we take a motion for adjournment, are there concerns? Ms. Harris?
Yes, and this is for council concerns part, right? Okay, I'm just making sure. It's not much of a concern, but I hate the lateness of this hour, but I feel like with the holidays coming, we all could use a big uplift of a Cinderella story. And I say that to say Parkside Junior High girls has never been one to win any games. And they have come out of an undefeated season, winning regionals, and they're headed to sectionals. And just to watch, literally, I've been watching them for some years now, and to really watch a Cinderella story, something that you normally would see on the movies, happening right here in our community. A team that was not even expected to win a few games to come out of this season undefeated is such an accomplishment. And I'm so proud of them. And we know how this year women's basketball has really been uplifted. So for our girls to even shine bright, I am very excited for them and can't wait to see them play in sectionals. And hopefully, my fingers crossed and all prayers that they make it and win state.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
I see that Greg Tremmel is in attendance tonight, and I want to extend a big thank you to him for all of his work with the town, and he won't probably have to attend the next council meeting as he's seeking to retire soon. But on behalf of myself, and I'm certain the rest of the council share this, you're a great asset to the community and to the town and how it functions. And on a lighter note, the Santa workshop is being constructed. My daughter was the first to notice it, and the hours are posted on the website, and you can find them at uptownnormal.com/Santa to find out the days there will be Santa visiting and accepting visitors and requests.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping in front of any council member. I do want to just clarify, while we are celebrating Mr. Tremmel's career next week, we're not letting him leave. So he will be here for another council meeting until the end of the year, and whether he wants to or not. So thank you.
Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned.